Kirk Drake, welcome back to see you on the show. Kirk from Credit Union 2.0 and Gary Jeter, welcome from TruStone Financial. I'm glad to have you both join me today. I'm looking forward to our conversation on AI. So if you would both tell me how you got started working in the credit union movement, and then what kind of work you're doing with credit unions today.
Sure. So I started a high school bank back in 1993. And when I got to college and suddenly got a girlfriend and needed to get a job, I applied for a bunch of bank jobs. Nobody called me back. Kind of panicked a bit and realized to put the wrong phone number on my resume. At which point I applied for a bunch of credit union jobs. An agriculture credit union hired me as a teller. I got fired from being a teller about 3 days in, and they put me in the IT department. Like I cashed some check that I wasn't supposed to have. And that was sort of the rest is history. I've spent the last 30 years since then on the credit union side of things. And I'm pretty focused today, I would say, on anybody who knows me knows I'm not a very focused person in the first place. But the three deepest areas right now that I'm intentionally working on, one is, and have been for the last 5, 6 years, on how AI impacts credit unions in every aspect, staffing, technology, et cetera. One is the balance sheet management side of it, specifically with AI, and how to buy, sell, trade, hedge, swap loan participations in an automated way that rebalances risk within the industry and eliminates brokers kind of in that process. And then one is highly focused in that same vertical, one layer deeper of the use of shorter term sale leaseback transactions for credit unions to unlock hidden net worth within their real estate assets. So there you go. There's my focus right now.
I see. So some light, fluffy subjects, Kirk. Excellent.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Always good to count on you for those light, fluffy subjects. Awesome. Well, welcome back. Glad to have you. Over to you, Gary.
Yeah, hey, so that's fascinating, Kirk, where a career progression gets fired from a teller and moving into IT. That's the first I've heard.
They didn't call it firing. They just said,
All
you'll be
right, all
better
right.
suited over here.
Yeah, it's a way into IT for sure, and so that's me. So I'm yeah, I'm Gary Jeter. I'm the Chief Technology Officer here at TruStone. And how I actually got into credit unions was about 5 years ago. So primarily, I spent most of my time in corporate America, working at companies, very large Fortune 500 companies. And essentially, I was living in Boston at the time, and at Firefly at the time, which was a credit union that was getting ready for a very big merger with TruStone. And so younger CEO reached out, just a great guy across the board, jumped on board, helped with the merger. And so from there, it's really been focused on learning about credit unions. And now that I'm in the space, I just absolutely love it. And what I love about it is it's not about shareholder value, it's about member value. And I've worked in a lot of companies and they may say customer focused, but it's really about shareholder value. And I served some time in the military as well, and that service actually really ties well into credit union because you really care about the member, you're really serving them, and you're driving forward. So absolutely love the credit union space. Been here 5 years, and I hope to be here a lot longer. As far as what I'm working on, I guess, is essentially we're really focused on TruStone on looking at our technology modernization, our architecture, those type of things. And then also from a digital transformation, a lot of our processes on bringing in a scaled agile framework and cultural transformation. And then the last thing is about fintechs and bringing in a lot of modern technology and artificial intelligence. It can't be more exciting time to be involved with financial industries, fintechs, and AI. It's just really, really cool. And that's why I'm focused on it. How do we leverage those, bring member value and bring team member value and credit union value to leveraging some of these technologies.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. So what I would love, and I'm going to kind of, knowing Kirk, I'm going to kind of put it in your court, and then I'll see if I have anything to offer at all. Two things that I really want to cover. I want to know what Gary's up to and what sort of the in place uses of AI are already there, and let's make it nice and tangible and talk about who the various providers are so our listeners can actually take something and put it into action from that. And then back up, if you would, and talk bigger about AI and strategy and like suggested first steps for credit unions that aren't there yet, because we know that's most of them, right? Most of them are not there yet, and the outcome I really want to achieve is I want to help them to get involved and to lean forward into AI.
Yeah, let me set it up slightly, which is there's no industry that has more structured data than ours. Right. Everything is a number at the end of the day, in a credit union and how it works. And AI thrives on structured data. Now it'll also work, on unstructured data these days, but at its core, to me, the reason why it is when I look for use cases of how it's going to be disruptive, I find 90% of them are in the financial services industry. And when I went to an AI ed tech conference this week with my daughter, because I decided I would teach the faculty some stuff about AI so that they don't just pretend like calculators aren't always going to be here. Um, and I went to that, and it's there are two use cases that 100 people are trying to solve versus the credit union industry where you'll see 100 use cases that 1,000 people are trying to solve. So set it up that way. Gary, I think you were one of the first people that started working on this and kind of jumped in early with Senso and some of what you're doing. So I'd love to have you kind of explain what you guys been doing with that and some of the success in there.
Yeah, hang on. Gary, just give me 1 second. I want to just back up one little bit. I'd really love to know the strategic source behind that. Like, was there a board strategy? Was the CEO calling out a strategy? Like, what got what you're doing started? Where'd it come from?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, our CEO, he is very forward-leaning when it comes to technology. And so when I jumped on board, once we got through the merger, it was really about, how do we prep from a strategy perspective, how do we prep the credit union as we move in this new age, right? And so a lot of that's technology architecture to be able to plug and play different things into it. On that journey and discovering different fintechs and discovering what type of capabilities exist out there. One of the groups I got involved in was CU 2.0 with Kirk. Went out to his VIP session. It was like a mini conference, if you will. And that's an opportunity to meet with a lot of fintechs with not a lot of pressure on sales, just more of a learning type thing. And one of the speakers was Sarup from Senso AI, and he shared what generative AI. So he gave a generative AI 101 class. And, we had all heard about ChatGPT. This was, what was it, like February, I believe. ChatGPT was released to the world in November, so it wasn't long after that. And it just blew my mind. I recognized right away that this was going to completely change the world. We were at a really big tipping point, just like when the web was launched. And this was something because of the way technology is moving and we're not at the bottom of the exponential curve, we're moving up, right? And unless you jump on it right now, you're not going to be able to get on it. And so brought that back, talked with my fellow executives, EVPs, and basically through an education type process, got people to say, yep, you know what, we'll do a proof of value with it. And then it kind of moved from there. So so strategic imperative, maybe that was a long way to answer what you're asking, but it was really driven from a strategy and then a learning perspective. So I mean, my recommendation to anyone out there is go to these fintech meetups, get involved in these conferences. I just came back from one, and you learn so much, it was fantastic. And so I actually thank Kirk for getting me involved with this one with our Fensa.
So go into what you're doing, Gary. I want to hear what you're doing
absolutely.
with AI.
So what I'll tell you, what we've done with generative AI, I can talk to a little bit of what we've done with some predictive models with machine learning, and I can talk about where we hope to go, right? So I talked about linking up, meeting Sarup from Senso AI. who's the CEO and founder. And so came back and essentially had a session where we said, okay, let's start with a proof of value. So I explained, gave this very similar class to my peers and CEO as far as what generative AI is, and define a use case around policies and procedures with Senso to say, hey, let's use this to be able to help solve a pain point that we have within the credit union, which is maintaining our policies and procedures. They were all over our intranet. Many of them were out of date. Probably most of them were out of date. There was always a challenge between what our training organization was training versus policies and procedures that were on the intranet. So managers were always being asked by new employees as far as what they, how to do things. And also looking up things while members are there. Bankers are looking up, okay, if they haven't done something in a long time, like open up an IRA, just really painful, bad member experience, poor productivity, and just even from a compliance perspective wasn't happening. So got buy-in from the EVPs to do a proof of value. So we did a very small proof of value with probably 70 policies, 10 folks from operations, retail, and we created it's agent fetch is what Senso calls it. We branded it True Assist. But essentially, it's just like ChatGPT, pulls off policies and procedures, which were all PDFs, and was able to answer questions as far as what are the steps I need to do to open an IRA. When we first did that, it was the model was a little bit immature. They're using the ChatGPT API, but as far as reading the data quality or the response quality was about 23%. However, the value was there. There was a lot of opportunity to be able to focus it. So we decided to move to what we said was a proof of concept. So we expanded it from 73 policies. We put 600 policies in there. We pulled in about, I want to say 50 team members within retail. And the way the model gets better is a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So essentially that proof of concept went through, response quality improved significantly. We got to about 75% response quality. And the other thing we discovered was we didn't wait till our policies were updated to reflect accuracy. We just put them in there. And what we found was we were able to identify through the response quality what policies were out of date, what policies were inaccurate. So it wasn't the large language model or True Assist that was necessarily giving bad responses. It was our policies that were giving bad responses. And so that created a whole an operations department that said, you know what, we didn't have this centralized before. We're going to pull it all under one team member that essentially will be the person that serves as the master orchestrator of our policies. So as soon as he got a thumb down response, he would reach out to the process owner, the manager, update the policy, drop it in there, replace the old one, and within near real time, 5 minutes, all of a sudden the right procedure was in there. Proof of concept was just immensely successful. And so we moved to what we call the pilot. So in the pilot, we expanded it to all Minnesota branches. We're talking 19. We had, at that point, we added some more policies. We discovered like a lot of the questions that were coming in were essentially HR policies, like what's the maternity leave policy. So we expanded to pretty much everything within our organization that you would find on the intranet. And again, response quality stepped up. We created training videos, hype videos, integrated into our training material, really refined that operations as far as how quickly can we identify a thumbs down or I can't respond to you, and smooth that out as far as being able to quickly update policies. And within a month, we then did a full production rollout. So everyone now uses it. And we no longer have any policy and procedures on our intranet. That's all gone because you can't keep them up to date. They're only within True Assist, and it's used every single day. And it's just the value it's given. It's been a real game changer. It's been huge.
Yeah. And I think,
go ahead, Kirk.
I was going to say that continuous life cycle piece of it, I think, is the magic, right? And then when you start thinking about what Senso's doing, all the places that continuous improvement process can be made to work way more efficiently. Um, the website, most credit unions' websites are actually pretty disjointed between what members are asking and searching for versus what they're finding. And I'm not talking like chatbots. I'm talking like Google search. How do I do this thing? How do I, most people want to figure it out before they call the call center, right? And so being able to optimize that and make sure that they're seeing the real information in there is a big game changer. Um, Same thing on financial analysis, end of month exception reporting and accounting, right? Like all of these sorts of things really thrive on the speed of business. And to me, that's a perfect example where Senso, the more and more use cases it can tackle to solve those speed of business type problems, the more value it is, the more differentiated it is, and the more that credit union is staying on the edge of the super competitive, reacting in the marketplace, side of things.
Yeah, you went from 23% of what I interpreted it as accuracy to 75% accuracy, right? And that was what I would term that you created a single source of knowledge for TruStone's processes and procedures. And then you fed it more and more data. And as you fed it more data, it got increasingly accurate. And now you have it as a fully scale model. Are you finding the accuracy now to be near 100%?
Yeah, well, I would say mostly, and where I'd say so it's response quality versus accuracy, and that's really measured through a thumbs up, thumbs down, right? So so it was the response quality before we moved into the pilot was about 73%. Now we're sitting probably 85, 90%. And it's because the data that the model is pulling might be pulling from the wrong source and giving information that either can't respond or doesn't really answer the question. So I would put it along those lines versus quality or accuracy. So it's for the most part, it's really, really solid.
And I think it's important to think about like traditionally, how would we do this? And the idea that this is a set in stone time period, right? Because the reality is the business rules, the regulation, the technology is constantly changing. If your core, your mobile banking, your whatever it is all in an agile mode, then how about you? It's funny. I log in, I pull up my phone every morning, I hit update, and there's always 18 new things, right? Like every day there's 18 new updates to the apps, right? Like, and so you just think about that process going on. And the old way we would do it would be we're going to send it to our training department who's going to read the procedures, document it. Then we're going to run some classes and we're going to educate people. And then we're going to, upgrade the software and it will be slightly different than what we thought. And kind of we're in this slow, methodical, kind of approach. And that was like best practices. And I think in the modern world or the tech world, every big tech company I've worked at, like there's no training, like there's no training department. It's expected that you figure this out kind of as you go, and it's clunky and it's painful, but that's how it works. And in this world, if you start to rethink how we do it, which is okay, now the new procedure, my subject matter expert, that software updates, if they just record a video of them figuring it out, right? Like not even the right way to do it, just them and they narrate the process of them figuring out how to do the new thing. And then that gets ingested into the AI that then the first person who needs to do that thing watches that video and then they give it thumbs up, thumbs down, and it gets a little refinement. Within about 3 to 4 cycles, that learning process gets optimized way faster. And it's not like the fifth person who asks the question ever sees the first 4 bad answers, right? And so when you think about the most common problems that occur, get the fastest revisions and get to the most number of people quickly, which then keeps the whole system operating way faster, way more agile than whatever you would have done historically, right?
Which is really, really interesting because one of the things that we got feedback initially, especially from some of the senior management EVPs, is like how can you launch this when it's 80% response quality? Well, the answer back, or the question back, was, well, what's the following the process quality today? Right? Because the process quality today is either people can't find the procedure on the internet, they have to go ask their manager, if that procedure changed, they don't know about it because they didn't read the email that went out last week. The training department may be going off it. So if you look at what the quality of how we were consistently following processes, don't have data, but I can guarantee you it's a lot less than 80%,
Yeah.
90%.
Yeah. And you don't even really know how to evaluate if teller A does it a way that's 5 minutes faster than teller B.
Yeah.
Like, how long does it take that data to get back to the training department to optimize it? And then how do you convince the other 100 tellers to do it as person A, right? Like, and so we spend all this time trying to teach our brains to memorize these stuff. And in some ways, I feel like the challenge of Gen X and Gen Z is switching to a mode of accepting that we don't actually have to memorize how to do anything, right? What we have to do is know how to find the best way to do it right now. And it's going to be different tomorrow. So there's really no point in even memorizing it, right?
Yeah, and it literally, it's 5 minutes updated, and everyone's using the same information
Right.
once you find that best practice.
Yeah.
It is so cool. Yeah.
So I think that's a great example of like how to get started. One other way that I would suggest that we've had success in building this in other credit unions and in CU2 itself was just sitting down with our team and saying, look, here's what I know. I know if you aren't embracing AI, you're probably going to be irrelevant long term. And I hate to say that, but it's like pretending like the internet's not going to happen or calculators aren't going to happen. Like eventually there will become a point in time where your skills will not be relevant to the problems that need to be solved in today's world. And maybe you're 3 years away from retirement and you're willing to say, like, don't care, don't need to learn this. But for the most of us, we're not that close to retirement. We're going to need to have some of these skills. So if that's true, then let's start a weekly or biweekly session. And I coach credit unions and their teams through this all the time. And it's not a negative session. It's simply come to this meeting with all the things that take less than 15 minutes that you're doing right now, quick inventory. And then as a group, we're going to spend an hour, hour and a half figuring out how to use AI. And figuring out, can we use AI to make this thing faster, better, cheaper? B, where are the limitations and problems in it? And C, if it works, how do we begin to roll this out to the whole organization, right? And teach everybody else. And it's an opt-in meeting. If you don't want to come, fine, don't come. But if you want to be part of this, here's how we're going to do it. And we just get on this call. We celebrate the wins that they figured out from the prior time period. We innovate and try new things. And within about 3 or 4 meetings, it blows people's mind what they're able to do in all the different use cases, whether it's writing job descriptions, whether it's analyzing. I had one where I uploaded 5 different bank statements and had it figure out my recurring transactions across all of that, as opposed to just my one credit union account, and then be able to connect the dots between interesting ways of how money was moving in those different paradigms. I've had it, all sorts of really interesting ways to use it to analyze problems that you just wouldn't have had the time to tackle before, or wouldn't have seen it in various ways. And so that's another way to get started that doesn't require really buying anything more than OpenAI and ChatGPT. You can, in theory, you could use Copilot. I find it to be significantly inferior compared to the current models and the cutting edge side of it. But it's the safe buy. No one's going to get fired for buying Microsoft, even though it doesn't really. I haven't found that it creates the unique IP that would be useful within the organization. And so I've done that now in probably 20 different organizations and had really good success in about 6 to 12 weeks of getting 10, 20, 30 people really embracing this and seeing the light. And then once they're off, they start connecting the dots every place.
What level is that? Are they mid-level managers or SVPs? What level?
I mean, in CU2's case, we went from frontline admin staff all the way to advanced sales, technology. We're using one use case we're using now. We've taken every fintech that we've ever worked with, their client list, uploaded it and mapped it to um, key things the fintech impacts in their 5,300 data. So like in the case of Senso, we've said, hey, they got these 20 clients. Let's look at how Senso impacts OpEx over time, right? And then create a peer group of all the credit unions using Senso compared to everybody else and says, we should be able to see that this group of credit unions operating expenses should be slightly lower than peer if this thing is producing this. So we did that technical mapping. And then we take all that data, throw it into ChatGPT, and it writes a fintech analysis report. It tells us we have one right now running that does Scimitar or Fiserv produce a better result financially over time? Does Alchemy or Q2? No one's going to like when we publish this.
Yeah, I bet.
But
someone's not going to like it.
I can tell you right now, early sneak peek, Fiserv credit unions generate 2 times the members of Jack Henry credit unions. Don't know why.
You heard it here.
Right. Using deep research in ChatGPT, we just dump all the data and say, tell me what the insights are out of it. Right now, we spend a lot more time customizing the prompts and then writing the reports and generating all that. But that's a great example where we just never would have had the time to start to get to that level without ChatGPT and AI. And where it's helps you too is every person in the organization went from bottlenecked and overwhelmed to a couple hours a day of free time as we've built these tools and components into the whole system.
Whoa, that's huge.
Hugely impactful. With I've got another company that we've done this with. We've plugged it into their ticketing system and analyzed the ticket, suggests a response to the customer, to the end technologist, combines all the policies and procedures, and it's being used by the frontline staff. And the frontline staff are part of this biweekly call, and the CEO is it. And sometimes I'll do coaching one-on-one with the CEO separately from that, but all levels in the organization can get there and can get the value in it.
Really, really, really interesting. And when you're doing this with credit unions, and what levels of folks are in the meeting that you described with credit unions, or does it vary?
It varies. It's whatever they want. But I've done it with board members too. So I've got some credit unions where a large top 5 credit union had me train their whole board, and their board uses it to analyze their board package. They each have their own custom prompts that they look at the board package with each month, and then it suggests questions for them in the board meeting. And I mean, really leveled up the entire discourse about what they're working on.
Wow. AI interpreting your board packet for you,
Right.
helping you understand and build smart questions. That is brilliant. Wow.
My all-time favorite use case, which has nothing to do with credit unions, is my surprise date night generator. So I took a whole bunch of information about my wife, what she likes, what music she likes, what food she likes, what things we've done memory-wise, like in our 20-year marriage that she's really enjoyed, put them all in there. And then I have ChatGPT suggest 20 surprise date ideas. And then I pick one, and then it's got a separate set of prompts that plan out the date as if I spent 100 hours planning the date. It takes about 4 minutes. And then I execute the date based on that. And she's like, oh my God, this date was amazing. You put a lot of thought into it. It's like, no, I really didn't. But
I did once when I prompted.
I did once.
ChatGPT.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
So
right.
it suggested a custom playlist. I mean, it was really over the top and kind of in those kind of things. So to me, that's where those group, because at the end of the day, if your employees are happy and productive, whether it's specifically related to credit union stuff or not, all of that stuff ends up producing a much better workforce, much better culture, much speedier time to market, in all of these different ways.
And your members are happier because they're filling out the right forms, they're doing the right processes, they're not having to do things twice, they're getting the right information. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's interesting that the process that you chose to start with was an internal process that still goes through the employees of TruStone to impact the members. Are there other things that you're already involved with AI, or what's next if you're not?
Yeah, no, we are right now. So today, right, and most people have chatbots, right? But their chatbots are more of a rule based, and our chatbot too for our omni-channel solution is rule based, right? So you get intents. I believe there is a little bit of machine learning involved, but it's primarily rule based, right? So which isn't a large language model, right? It can't understand context. It can't understand what questions were asked previously. So we're in the process working with a partner to say, okay, let's use a large language model to essentially bring this member facing with our chatbot. So that's what we're working. We're hoping to have that out this year. We purposely started internally because of LLM hallucinations. But AI is a very broad scope, right? You have these chatbots which are more rule based. Then you have machine learning. So we just launched a machine learning model which essentially about member attrition, whose likelihood to attrit. Use that model, trained it on our data. So we worked with a fintech called Trellens, which I think most people probably know. Took their model, trained it on our data, and now that information is being fed to marketing and retail to identify those, the top 10% of members that are attrit, and how do we go in there and move, retain those members. And the next models we're working through. Again, these are machine learning models, they're not large language models, but next best product. And we're almost getting ready to launch that in June, which will then turn around and tie very nicely with the attrition likelihood to attrit models. So go ahead.
I was going to say, I love those examples. We've got two that I would share that we're working on. One is um, it looks at the loans that you want to buy or sell, right, from a participation perspective, and figures out what credit unions in the marketplace would benefit or have loans to sell for you based on your specific balance sheet today, right? Because sometimes the loans are worth more if you're selling a pool of auto loans, let's say it's a 7% yield, those are worth more to a credit union in North Carolina because they're getting auto loans at 5.5% than they are to a credit union in Oregon because they're booking loans at 6.5, 7%, right? And so when you have those arbitrage pieces where different markets are able to get different rates and assets from their members, you start having those opportunities. So it figures that out. And then the next one, we're just starting this, is we've uploaded about 10 different credit union balance sheets, and it comes back and suggests strategies and matchmaking around buy, sell, hedge, and swaps, and creates uh, synthetic swaps between credit unions to offset their various risks from a balance sheet perspective behind the scenes. And it can do that matchmaking and figure out where that exists within the industry.
You know, just going back, which Kurt was talking, within, how do you get started? How can you begin if you haven't even started yet? During the for generative AI. And one of the things we did was really started with a policy, and that policy wasn't so restrictive. There wasn't a fear base that says, "Oh my gosh, if I lose, member information." It's more of, okay, we're going to open up Chat GPT, we're going to open up Gemini to team members, and we have a data loss prevention module, and we created a policy as far as what you're responsible for. You're responsible to make sure that the responses are accurate, and said, hey, go use this, right? Go use this in your day-to-day work, whether it's email, writing, social media posts, but, tie it into your day-to-day work. And that has been able to, and through a lot of education. So I do a CTO virtual coffee where I talk about, artificial intelligence and data and things like that. Topics vary. So essentially with that's bubbling up use cases, or like our compliance, hey, this is something that's really going to be a force multiplier for us. So we're finding use cases within the organization that then we're going out with fintechs, and we're bringing those things forward to do a matching to bring in. So
Yeah.
that's a good place to get started, starting with that policy, and allowing people to use it, allowing people to be our team members and be safe.
So the fintechs or the AI companies that we've mentioned so far, Senso AI is the one that you have used for the internal single source of knowledge that you talked about, Gary. And
Mhm.
then Kirk, your company, Credit Union 2.0, is involved in a variety of different AI applications. And I don't know that I could do a good job of saying to credit unions, here's what Kirk does, because I think you do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it would be difficult. I mean, I think at the end of the day, when I was researching the AI book in 2019, 2018 timeframe, 99% of the fintechs I talked to were using some form of machine learning or AI in what they were doing, and no credit unions were at that time for the most
Hmm.
part, right?
That's
And
right.
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
that was super eye-opening for me. I would say most of what we're working with today is using it in some form or fashion. Um, if you want a comprehensive list, I can follow up with that, but it would be too many to state, and we'd waste the rest of this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, my objective is to make it actionable for
Yeah.
listeners that are not yet there or just trying to. They're going to have their strategic planning session, and they're thinking about, okay, we need to get on board. How do I get started? And
Yeah.
my takeaway from Gary is consider involvement in some of the AI initiatives of the industry. Kirk's with Credit Union 2.0. I'm sure that the NACUSO conference that's very soon, or I guess by the time this airs, may have been just recently, is going to have some more topics like that to help you get some ideas around what do you want to go after first. So TruStone went after the single source of knowledge internally. I've heard I had Mitch Rutledge on the call just the other day, and we talked about using it for marketing purposes and outreach. And the next best product that you brought up, Gary, as your next step. Is
Yeah.
what we talked about in that podcast. So when you think about the industry as a whole, Kirk, what else comes to mind as far as what you're seeing? Maybe more credit unions adapting. Is there any kind of what you're seeing the most of happening?
I think the most is there's two big things. One, it's they deploy Copilot with Microsoft, and then they check the box and go, "I'm doing AI stuff," and I'll back in the
All
sound.
set.
And yeah, and like that's just it's the silliest thing. But I see that probably 9 out of 10 times out of folks out there. And then 1 out of 10, they're intentionally picking some pilots and trying things, kind of like Gary is, and diving deep on usually around knowledge management piece of it. And while I think that is a phenomenal use case, I think the idea that you're going to have one AI is nonsense. Like you're going to have 50 or 100, of these. They're going to be specialty trained in all parts of your organization, and there are going to be lots of agents for lots of people. And this is it's like internet. It's going to change every single app and every single interaction with technology. Even at the end of the day, like you think when we were working on CU Wallet 10, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, we walked in and you thought about, pulling up your app at a McDonald's or a Subway and configuring your sandwich or your burger, right? And I even back then I said, look, at the end of the day, me walking into McDonald's and saying I want a quarter pounder with cheese, no onions, is faster than any app will ever be. No matter how well I know that user interface, the human language is the most efficient way to communicate wants, desires, needs, transactions. And so now that generative AI is there, when we think about mobile banking, when we think about all those interactions, I don't think the UI is going to matter in 5 or 10 years. I think we're going to have completely shifted to a different way of interacting that will get much more simplistic and much more responsive and much easier for the average consumer than where we live in the world today. And all the human norms of not being willing to ask a question that might make me look stupid, right? Go away when I'm asking a GPT or AI because there's no fear of looking stupid with the computer yet. Maybe we'll find some way to inject that. But I think we're going to see some pretty significant shifts in there. And at the end of the day, I just think trying these things and being open and being curious about what it can do today versus, frankly, I'll log on one week and try something and come back a week later and it works, right? And if you're not ready to take advantage of the works, right, you're missing that opportunity and that speed and that learning and being able to see the fourth, fifth, sixth iteration of something because it's like Gary started with the first proof of value or was not all that much value, right? And it's the third, fourth, fifth iteration that really starts to create the competitive advantage. And when you're the credit union that's coming in, when Gary's had this working for 2.5 years, even if you plug it in on day one, you're never catching him, right?
Yeah, and let me highlight one thing with that too. The proof of value we started at the end of October. We launched the full production in February the next year.
Wow, that's
So
great.
it is not a long cycle time to be able to deliver these things. It's not like a 1 year
Right.
CRM implementation. It is like bang, bang, bang. And I think Kurt's directly on right when you talk about it's not one solution like Microsoft Copilot, and that covers my generative AI solutions. What I think where it's going is these, which really makes me excited is agentic AI, where essentially these agents can take the information in, understand the context, and take the action even without a human involved, right? And so, I think a great example of that is so a member calls up, right, and says, "Hey, I see that company XYZ, I charge on my credit card. Essentially, I don't recognize it. It's a large charge. What is it about?" Right. So you have natural language processing that can take that information in, right, and then essentially recognize the context behind it and can go back into the thing and say, okay, has she ever dealt with XYZ company before? Has there ever been a charge around it? And then essentially take that and then feed it to different agents, right? So there's going to be an agent that looks at essentially things like, what is the history along there, right? What is the process essentially to be able to, identify if there's, again, kind of histories along those things. So you probably want to cut this part out, but essentially what I'm saying is that these things will be able to identify like, okay, you need to have an investigation because it is something that's an outlier. Based on her individual spending habit, this charge has never occurred, and kick off that to be able to begin the process and provide a response to her that essentially will say things like, "Hey, based on your purchase history, it is abnormal. We've already started it." And we've already kicked off that, in a few days, you're going to be credited the money back onto your account, and we'll keep you updated as where it goes. Again, there's no human involved in that. That's essentially the large language model or the agentic AI that's essentially doing that for the member. So that's the type of things that I think will be really, really cool in the future. So
Yeah.
it's really a game changer.
So how far away is that? Like, agentic AI is something I've been reading about for months now. But in credit unions, it takes a while, right? So I haven't found any credit unions using an agentic AI form yet. Kirk, have you? And then
Having
if
that,
you haven't, would you like to make a prediction here for our listeners of when the first agentic AI use is going to be in a credit union?
I don't think it's going to be long. I'm sure someone's already probably playing along with it, playing around with it. So whether they're willing to speak about it openly, that might be another year or two. But there's lots of the good news is, and I have a warped view of this or a biased view of this, which is the CU2 clients tend to be on the cutting leading edge in general, right? Because they want to look at the early stuff. They're not just putting their heads in the sand, and they tend to be pretty innovative. So I tend to see a wider spectrum of this stuff much earlier. That being said, uh, I would, we were if every fintech was using AI, 4 or 5 years ago, I think it is definitely on the awareness of credit unions at this point. I've had a number of board planning sessions where we go through this and get things jump started really, really quick. and their boards love it and get on board. Again, self-selecting, right? The credit unions that want to be
Yeah.
relevant in that regard are the ones doing that. Um, but I do think this will continue to be a significant change. I think the real question to me is not so much when will we see these things, it's when will credit unions go, okay, let's pretend I built the credit union from the ground up using AI today, right? And if I were to do that, what would be different about how I approach business, strategic planning, my day-to-day interactions, how my org structure looks, all that kind of stuff. And once you start to see those patterns, then the question is, how fast do I need to close that gap, right? And how fast do I need to be investing in these other things to take advantage? Because we've already seen Rocket Mortgage going, hey, just upload all your documents and we'll fill out the forms for you. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about you. I would love to never have to fill through, to do the database entry work for my credit union as a consumer. Again, how many credit unions are putting that in place? Not very many, right? So we have examples, whether it's Rocket Mortgage or a firm of big fintechs that are unicorns that are really dominant in their use of AI in interesting ways, and are basically their business model is built on the success of this long term. And I haven't seen any credit unions go, you know what, AI first, right?
Yeah, I think it's to go back in history as an analogy, right? So when you think of the automobile and Henry Ford came out with the production line, he redesigned the factory, right, to be around that process, right? So if you think about AI, right, how do you redesign the credit union, the processes around that new capability, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the game changer, and that's the type of lens that credit unions need to look at to be able to stay relevant, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, months ago in November, I published an interview with Nimbus, NYMBUS,
Yeah.
and they are a digital brand for credit unions that you just plug into it and you've got your fully operational digital system. And it makes me wonder if the AI native system is another version of that, or maybe that's what Nimbus becomes, is where it is your immediate to market AI centric organization that you plug into, and then you slowly bring the mothership along at the pace that you can scale to.
Well, especially because we definitely are in the classic innovator's dilemma where everybody goes, okay, everybody's asking me about AI, so I'm going to claim I'm doing AI, even if I'm doing it half-assed and not very well. I'm going to claim I'm doing it versus things like Senso that just got built from the ground up with it, right? Like it is entirely built on the idea of generative AI. They're not having to change their language model. They're not having to change anything else. They're just building it, and there is no time in history from a company innovator's dilemma perspective where the startup from the ground, show me one core that succeeded in online mobile banking that owns that space today. All of them are independents that were built from the ground up, right?
Mhm.
Even at the same time, show me an online banking provider that dominated with mobile. Nope. Right? Mobiles came up and added online banking after the fact, right?
Ah,
Like,
Yeah.
so each time, because it's almost impossible to cannibalize yourself quickly enough, there you have these challenges. And to me, when the credit union's making their tech bet of going, is Fiserv going to be really, really good at AI? Well, look, they're going to have AI. Don't get me wrong. Are they going to be completely dominant and dependent on that thing working from the ground up? Probably not, right? They have enough legacy business and payments and everything else. They don't need it to be. Sarup needs it to work. His business model and his valuation and his ability to raise money can only work if he makes this work, right? And that needs-based approach to development, that's to me where as an industry, we have to recognize the disruptors that are coming for us are going to be built on that. And we need to intentionally be willing to disrupt ourselves in that process and rethink of that world.
That organizational change management is probably one of the biggest barriers, not the technology, but being able
Right.
to, culturally embrace that change, lean forward. General Shinseki said that if you don't like change, you're not gonna like being relevant or irrelevant anymore,
Yeah.
something like that. But essentially, I think that's a great example where you got to embrace change, got to have a culture that's leaning
Yeah.
forward and a culture of trying and experimenting.
Yes, so I want to wrap this up by Gary getting, I want to get you to go back and think through the life cycle of the way you brought AI into the credit union and what you did and what order you did it. If you could go back and do it again, assuming that someone is listening and they're going to start from scratch, how would you do it differently? What would you do sooner? What would you change? What would you do different than what you did it this first time? Or what would you do the same if you would say, yeah, this worked really great? I would suggest your listeners do the same kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say I brought it in from an approach of learning from other less successful initiatives as far as bringing it in. So, one, I think the key to success was a couple things. One, educating the EVPs, getting them involved up front as far as what it is, and agreeing to a decision like, okay, let's experiment, let's do a proof of value. So that was critical because as that proof of value and taking it, one step at a time, that four phase method worked really, really well. And now we're taking that as we're bringing in new technology and new fintechs. The other thing is having having a sponsor that is in the business, right? So a technology, coming out of IT, right, being the CTO, especially not being within, long credit union history, right? We had a sponsor who was basically, she was the SVP, a regional director of retail. So she was responsible for half the branches in Minnesota. She just embraced it. And she was our executive sponsor that was on the ground, that was really driving it. So that that is key. It can't be an IT initiative. It's really you got to have that business sponsor that's driving it and embracing it, right? And willing to learn. So those were really successful. So it's that collaboration.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because one credit union I talked to had figured out the IT team had gone off and done a bunch of the ML analytics and figured out that basically check holds don't actually accomplish much of anything, and they could never find a single instance where it actually had prevented any particular fraud or loss on behalf of the member. And they could prove it data wise. Because they had no sponsor on the branch ops side, no one would implement it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, we like to believe that if we show the data that people are going to be willing to do it, but there's an emotional connection to this. And if you don't have that sponsor that's bought in, that wants to also be along for the ride and the change, no amount of data and proof is going to actually convince them of it.
Yeah. And somebody with street cred that can carry that forward. And so that's huge. And we're as we bring in these new technologies, we're doing the same thing.
Excellent. Well, Gary Jeter and Kirk Drake, thank you for your work in the credit union movement. Kirk, particularly your date night innovator GPT. We will be looking for that on the.
Feel free to email me. I'll send you the prompts.
Yes. Give us the prompts in the notes for this podcast so everyone can have a better date night, an ever improving date night as a result of Kirk Drake's forward-looking ideas. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody in the credit union movement. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Doug.